SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.
Ford of Corinth has trucks built Ford tough with powerful engines and rugged exteriors. Whether you're hauling cargo, towing a trailer, or just need a reliable daily driver, Ford of Corinth has the truck for you, which includes a lifetime powertrain warranty. FordofCorinth.com.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to Middays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Everyone, and welcome to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Hump Day.
Back in the old saddle on Hump Day. Appreciate you and Dave for holding down the fort. I feel like I traveled to the equator this morning relative to the temperature up there in Washington, D.C. Man, oh man, the frigidity of the air and the wind blowing, just brutal. Of course, what about here at home? Snow? What'd you tell me? Ice skating on Canal Street, downtown New Orleans?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Unprecedented somewhat. Certainly been a long time, huh?
Especially for that much accumulation.
Just bizarre. Crazy.
It is really strange to see pictures of the beach with the waves lapping up onto snow.
Isn't that something? Really something. If it's okay, I just wanted to start, since I haven't been on the air since our colleague, our friend, Paul Gallo, earned his heavenly wings. And I know it's been talked about a lot. Wonderful job the team here at SuperTalk did in putting up a tribute to him, which I thought was absolutely spot on. We're all shocked and saddened, of course, that the dean of talk radio, the godfather of it, really put it on the map here in the state of Mississippi and helped Mr. Davenport realize his vision of creating a statewide network to inform every inch of our state on a daily basis with news from across the state and stories of interest, of course, and just information to help them conduct their lives. And Mr. Gallo was a pro at it. I know I touched on it yesterday, but he also had an extremely strong work ethic. And Rhino, as you and I know, and many of our audience may not, the heavy lifting's done when you're not sitting behind this mic.
Oh, yeah.
And that's because we want to deliver a high-quality product to you. You just have to sit back and listen. And he understood that better than anybody. And his effort, his work, again, away from the mic, was unmatched. He was incredible in that respect. I wanted to share just a little personal story and tribute. Many people may not be aware of this, but the first time I ever came in this studio was as a guest on the Gallo Show, sitting right there in that chair, him in, of course, the host seat where I am right now. And that was in the 2009 time frame, long time ago. And it came from interest I had. I know I've talked about this on the show in healthcare reform. When I learned of what Barack Obama's plans were, I got I got pretty concerned about how that would affect our business. Started doing research, just starving for information, trying to make business decisions. And what's this going to cost me? So I wrote an article about it that was published in Madison County. I'm grateful for that. And you know how this works in our world. Our content directors are constantly scouring media, other media sources, to see who is talking about things that might be good guests to have on our programs and discuss them in greater detail. So I get that now. I didn't at the time, but I can only conclude that the content director for TeleSouth SuperTalk back then saw that, called me up, said, hey, we want you to come on the Gallo show and talk about this issue, and I did. And then appeared numerous times after that on various other policy topics, business topics, economics, a lot of the same sort of stuff we focus on here. But I'll never forget just how gracious he was and how much fun it was just to have a conversation with him. I mean, he really was truly a conversational type talk show host. Really, really good at it. And, you know, that's what we all aspire to do is our part of our interviewing process. And he had perfected it. There's no doubt about that. And he made me feel so comfortable, and it wasn't unusual for him often to send, and not just me, but guests he has on the show. A lot of folks may not realize that. He would have reached out to them at 4 o'clock in the morning with a text or a call. Hey, why don't you come on today? Just something that he thought would be valuable and important to the audience. And he did that with me when we formed the lottery up, as an example. When I sold the company, I mean, just things like that he would pick up on, and I jumped at the chance. It was always so much fun to be around him, be in the studio, and talk about stuff that you feel like would be of interest to the audience. He just was a master at it, and I'll certainly miss those attributes, those qualities, those skills, and what he did for our state. And as was said in the many write-ups about him, I don't think you'd find another person who loved our state more than him. I mean, when you think about just a true, pure, dedicated Mississippian, you think about him. And there is no doubt, and you know this, Rhino, that he shaped policy to a great extent in our state. People down there at that Capitol paid attention. They listened to him. They were influenced by his commentary, his analysis. And when they came in this studio and he interviewed him, he cut them no slack. He was very direct, and he could do it in an entertaining way, and in a respectful and entertaining way. But if somebody said something, especially an elected official that, let's say, might be inconsistent with something they'd said before, or didn't really line up or align with reality or truth, he was great at pointing that out and exposing that, which is what you should do in this chair. You know, we should all hope, those of us who do this, and he was, of course, a career consummate professional as a talk show host, we should all be hopeful that we could be as excellent at it as he was. He will be sorely missed, not only in this building and among this team, and he truly did see the rest of us as his team members, and was always so positive about this company, but he'll be missed by this entire state. Nobody better at it than him. It's deeply saddening for me and all the folks here at SuperTalk, and again across our state. And I think we have to reflect on all the positive contributions he made to the great state of Mississippi. He is one of a kind in that respect. Paul Gallo, man, he'll be missed. Wow. So got in yesterday, the ordeal of a few days in Washington. The first thing I want to tell you, we're so dang lucky to live here. We really are. I just, not that you don't like traveling and being in other places and witnessing and being exposed. But we got a pretty good thing here in the state of Mississippi. And sometimes, I guess, like all things in life, we forget, just how fortunate we are. And it's maybe not as obvious. But until you go somewhere else and then you realize, not that it wasn't great being in Washington, don't get me wrong. I don't think it'd be a place I would enjoy living at for an extended period of time, is all I'm saying. Certainly not a place I would like to be raised in. Now, I'm sure people there think the same about us. It's all a matter of what you're accustomed to and what you come to enjoy and appreciate. So I appreciate being able to live here in the great state of Mississippi. There's a lot to be said for that. What an ordeal it was. A frigid one at that. And to top it all off, my friend, I got back last night, and the battery in my key fob was dead and could not start my car. And had to go watch videos on how to open up my car and start it with a dead key fob battery. Finally got it started and headed to a local drugstore to buy a battery. And my wife had to get out and go buy it because I couldn't turn the car off. We're coming right back. We've got Congressman Michael Guest at 11:05 from the Element Well studio.
It's all right.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Gerard Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Yeah, the old laptop definitely on the fritz here. So, it's been a rather eventful couple of days there with the president being sworn in. He's wasted no time signing a number of executive orders.
And the media has wasted no time beclowning themselves.
Oh, my gosh. This is what I think is notable right out of the gate here. He said he's having press conferences. He answered more questions yesterday than Joe Biden did in his entire 4 years, I think.
But nobody in the media knew until the debate.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's true. That's absolutely true. And now we're learning more.
Just going to keep reminding people that the Democrats and the media lied to your face and expected you to believe it. And then, when they could no longer lie anymore, they acted ignorant.
So true. That's absolutely so true. So, the executive orders just are across the board, affecting numerous areas. I don't know that I've ever seen an executive order signed or a ceremony almost, if you will, of the president signing a series of executive orders with the public present in Capital One Arena. That's kind of a new deal. I don't have necessarily a problem with it. I just found it interesting, and he did so.
I mean, usually they do like he did with the stack of orders in the Oval Office with the press. Not usually Q&A question time with the press while doing so, But usually there is press availability for a kind of photo opportunity with some of the executive orders. But, yeah, I don't recall there ever being an arena setting for the signing of anything.
Interesting. No doubt about it. It's kind of neat. The thing that struck me, honestly, about his inauguration speech and many of these executive orders, at first, it's just reintroducing common sense to replace nonsense. The fact that that's even necessary because of what we have endured the past 4 years is a bit sad that this country got to that point. So many times, you and I talked about it, this prioritization of, you like to call it the melanin content of one's skin. I sort of refer to it as one's physical attributes. People are always, of course, nice to point out that sexual orientation is also considered in kind of that basket of identity politics, which isn't really a physical immutable trait. And that's fine. I accept that, acknowledge that. The bottom line is, it's all part of the same narrative where we're more concerned about one's identity, which consists of all those immutable and even mutable characteristics, than their capabilities, their qualifications, their performance, their value proposition. And that was adopted not only in the public sector, but the private sector as well. And we've witnessed many in the private sector over certainly the last year, and even more predominantly over the last 6 months. We've seen many of those policies rolled back in corporate America. And now, based on President Trump's executive orders, we're seeing it rolled back, ordered, shutting down today, dissolving these goofy DEI departments where that has been prioritized. Day one, as you and I talked about, when Joe Biden signed a series of orders, that was like the first one, as I recall. We're going to make that a central theme in all policymaking across the agency spectrum in the United States government. Not what their mission is, their core function. No. We're going to make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion and all of these physical traits and identities, that those drive policymaking. And then, of course, he said, hold my beer, did Joe Biden, and he nominated a whole bunch of incompetent people based on that. I like to refer to it as filling out a chessboard. One of these, one of them, one of those. Not, oh, this person's actually qualified to run Homeland Security. I don't really care what they look like, what their background is, what their sexual orientation is. You're my person. And the fact that the president has to issue an executive order declaring effective today the federal government only recognizes two sexes. He said genders, and of course, you know, they were there's a group.
The actuallys of the world.
That's right. They like to point that out. It's not gender, it's sex. Okay, got you. We know what he's talking about. That's the point. You got off into the weeds and you're splitting hairs. That's unimportant. We get it. The fact that a United States president has to state that and issue an order just shows you how far we drifted into crazy land.
The tail wagged the dog for far, far too long.
No doubt. And so I absolutely applaud that. And then he says no longer, as part of his inauguration speech, will our servicemen and women, members of our armed forces, be subjected to political experiments. That's sad. that you even have to say that. And I think he said radical political theories and social experiments. I think I got the language right there. That's crazy that you even have to say that. And they're going to, oh, by the way, we're going to ask him to focus on, I don't know, defeating the enemy. What a novel idea there, Mr. President. Bravo. And you're thinking, this is a softball. This is easy. This isn't complex tax policy or foreign policy. This is just common sense. Could we say that? I know I saw a lot of Trump memorabilia all over the place, souvenirs and so forth, lots of shirts, you've seen it, and other items with the president's image imprinted and usually a flag draped over him. Daddy's home. I agree. I'm saying common sense has re-entered the building. How about just sanity has re-entered the building? That's just crazy that we even have to spend time and money to unravel all of which we spent time and money on that produced nothing. I'd argue it produced worse outcomes.
Well, it made some people filthy rich.
That's true. The shakedown artists
and the whole cottage industry of stupidity surrounding feelings.
That is so true. So true. Man, that's just depressing to some extent that we got to that point. But it's reality. And we had a president that was clueless and being guided around by people who took this as their mission in life. Oh, we're going to change the way we operate around here. Merit means nothing. Capabilities, qualifications. By the way, we hate profit. I mean, just the whole gambit. Everything that made the country exceptional and provides the highest standard of living on the planet, they want to tear down, essentially. Everything. So we got a new president that comes in and says, no, we ain't doing that anymore. Again, that was a softball. But it's necessary. I'm not saying it wasn't necessary. It was totally necessary. So proud to see that. Also, a series of other orders as well concerning immigration and energy. We'll get to some of that in the program. Once again, we're in the Element Well studio. The Congressman Michael Guest, who represents Mississippi's 3rd District, is on the program at 11:05. And then we've got Maurice Sanderson, GOP strategist, on later as well. Stay with us.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk Mississippi.
Down at the Astoria, the scene was changing. Bingo and rock were pushing out X-ray things. We were the first band to bomb it in the bar and find the distance to the stage too far. Meanwhile, it's getting late at 10 o'clock. Rock is dead, they say. Rolling rock.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We are live in the Element Well studio. So, the State Department, by the way, through an executive order, has just ordered that we won't have any flags flying except the American flag. This is, again, insane that you even have to do this. But that's been a problem, has it not? Remember the various Veterans Administration's facilities? We even found out the hospital on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. When was that? A year or two ago? During Pride Month? Had the Pride flag on the flagpole at the facility in all of these veterans hospitals across our country. Had all sorts of signage and messages all over the place We made a much bigger deal out of celebrating Pride Month in America's buildings and within our institutions than we do our nation's founding. That's crazy. Once again, it's nonsense. It's just replacing nonsense with common sense. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says that we're not going to fly. This is based on an order from the president. Applies to embassies, outposts, other official buildings that house folks that work for the U.S. State Department. Only the American flag is authorized to be flown at all U.S. facilities, both domestic and abroad. I'm reading from the order and featured in U.S. government content. Again, it's crazy. I don't know what other word to use. Loony, deranged, insane. I could come up with a lot of different descriptors. The flag of the United States, the order goes on to read, of America, united all Americans under the universal principles of justice, liberty, and democracy. These values, which are the bedrock of our great nation, are shared by all American citizens, past and present. And I think this is just a continuation of the president's message in his inauguration speech that he intends to unify the country, unite the country. We were told, of course, in the 2020 election cycle, we had to vote for Joe Biden because he was going to restore the soul of the nation. How'd he do on that? He had us at each other's throats, honestly. And it's because of this leaning into identity politics and prioritizing that over everything, right? Everything. It took center stage. And immediately upon nominating those to serve in his cabinet and other key roles in government, you just look at them and say, and I hate to base an opinion, form an opinion solely based on one's physical appearance. That's unfair. I don't like to do that.
But 9 times out of 10, you can tell crazy with one look.
Thank you. And that's the other aspect, the reality of that. When you appoint this crazy Rachel Levine, and it was just only because, exclusively, I believe, because he identifies as a
dude in a dress.
But you're not. You're a guy. You're a man. You look silly. I'm embarrassed that you're wearing the nation's uniform like that. Is that wrong?
No.
I got to tell you, standing in line for the near 2 hours that we did to get into the ball, I told you we ultimately bailed, and many other people do. I felt like we wouldn't get back till 3 o'clock in the morning, had to be at the Capitol. Congressman Michael Guest was gracious enough to give Julie and I and friends a tour before they opened up for business and we could get to places we couldn't. But that's the main reason we bailed, honestly. But seeing the members of our armed forces in their dress blues all over the place, all branches, of course, in line, attending the commander-in-chief's ball. Same line, same place. Man, it just evokes a sense of pride. Do we not have the best-looking military uniforms on the planet? By far. By far. And I don't want to pick a favorite. I don't think that's fair. They're all fantastic. But, Rhino, in front of us were 2 airmen. And right behind us in line, 2 sailors. And it was neat talking to them. Young men, of course, serving their country in uniform. And they just looked fantastic wearing those uniforms. One thing I will say, though, I don't know what the standard is and policy says about outerwear. These folks didn't have any outerwear on. It's 25 degrees, and all they got is those dress blues on, and they look fabulous. Don't get me wrong. But there's no outerwear. I can't imagine. I was freezing my rear off with a big overcoat.
I don't think formal dress uniform overcoats are, I know they're available. I don't think they're issued to anyone outside of those guarding the tomb of the unknown soldier.
Okay. Well, I did see the one of the sailors behind me. The only one I saw had the pea coat on.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, has 13 buttons on it, right?
Something like that.
Representing the 13 colonies? I think that's the symbolism there. But I didn't see anybody else. And some of these folks were high-ranking officers, of course, attending. And they got their dress blues on. And they look fabulous. And I know they're cold. It's sad. So I'm not sure if that's something that they have to buy on their own or if it's forbidden, it's prohibited. I don't know. I haven't researched it. I just know I felt bad for them because these folks are serving their country. And they're all shivering, trembling. We all were. I felt like, have we gone in reverse 200 years? Like, what happened to civilization? And you know what really saddened me about that? I'm not upset at the heightened, elevated, beefed up security. You know what bothers me? Is that there are idiots in this world that inconvenience the 99.999% plus of the population who aren't thinking about stupid stuff like getting in a truck and gunning it and running over people. Like blowing up the president or even other innocent civilians, like inflicting some sort of horrific terror. That has changed our world. And I talked to some folks when I was up there about, the old days, before we had all that stuff. I visited with Congressman Guest yesterday. We hung out after our tour in the Cannon building, House buildings, where a lot of reps have their offices. Heck, even to get in that building. And I get it. You don't want nuts coming in a building with a bunch of U.S. House of Representatives members. I just find it sad that we've gotten to that point, that we've got to erect these 12-foot high steel grill barriers all over the place to route traffic. You just can't walk on the street, on the sidewalks. Again, I'm not being critical of the overcautious security. I'm just lamenting the fact that we've gotten to that point, and not only in this country, but in the world. Think about flying, those of you that are old enough, pre-TSA. Pre-TSA. Now, what an inconvenience that is. And there were magnetometers set up. I don't know how many of them, look like 40 or 50 outside the Washington Conference Center. Very similar to a TSA. A little even more comprehensive in terms of screening. To get in the Cannon building yesterday, I had to take my watch off. I don't think you have to do that. I've never had to take my watch off going through TSA scanning that I recall. But my watch, and I heard him saying to people, you got to take your watch off. I said, really, in line in front of me, and I got there and had to take my watch off. I had to take my glasses off and put them in the little container to run through. And again, I'm not being critical. I'm just pointing out that it's a sad thing that our world's gotten that point. All because of a handful of maggots that are subhumans that don't deserve to be above ground, I'm going to say it, to coexist with the rest of us because they only want to harm people. And they've inconvenienced and turned it, and it costs a lot of money to do that as well. We're stepping aside for a break. Final segment of Hour 1 of Middays. Get back in the swing of things. Once again, Congressman Michael Guest will get his thoughts on the inauguration and everything else in Washington. That's at 11:05. Stay with us.
Patriotism is
Middays with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
The blues has got a hold of me. I keep thinking about the night in Memphis. Lord, I thought I was in heaven. I keep thinking about the night in Memphis. I thought I was in heaven.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Well studio. Just doing a little analysis. I know I get fired up about this stuff, and it really does. Think about what happened on 9/11. That led to the creation of TSA. I think folks that were around then, I certainly was. I was flying, I've talked about it before, my weekly commute to the Garden State of New Jersey. Man, I could park my car in the parking lot at Jackson International Airport, and I was on like the 5:45 a.m. Back then it was Northwest, would fly to Memphis. That was a hub for Northwest before Delta acquired them, and then into Philadelphia. It was very convenient. And I could park my car 20 minutes before departure because they didn't have all these rules about when they close the door, all that stuff for security. And heck, I park my car and go across the walkway there, the sky bridge that connects the parking lot to the main concourse, and take a right, walk 40 yards, and boom, I'm on the airplane. Think about how that's changed today. All because of a few idiots that want to kill people. I don't know how else to say it any more plain. You want to kill people, and you've turned the dang world upside down. And that's where we are. Something else I wanted to share, folks. I talked earlier about how fortunate we are to live in the great state of Mississippi. And I think we're all accustomed to the lifestyle we live here, like everybody is to all their lifestyles. And you kind of envision yourself whenever you're traveling. And maybe as I get older, I become more appreciative of how good we got here. But I got to tell you guys this, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way. The city of Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, having traveled on the Metro Rail, which is really a cool, efficient system, I'll have to tell you that, which if you guys have ever looked at the map, you've seen it. If you think about the center of the terminating points for the most part, it being in the center of Washington, D.C., around that Capitol complex, and all those lines that extend out in all directions, north, south, east, west, all the way around. It's really pretty efficient. You can change trains and change directions to get to where you're going. We had to do that. But here's what I was going to say. It's filthy. Washington, D.C., filthy. Now, you know who runs the place? Muriel Bowser is who, as I recall, was the first one to come out, you remember this, and paint on some major street thoroughfare, Black Lives Matter, in gigantic block, bright yellow traffic paint, road paint. Remember that? Oh, they got to do that. Your city sucks. It's dirty. It's filthy. And you can't help but smell the dope all over the place, including on the Metro Rail. And something else I observed at every Metro Rail station. Now, it costs money. It's cheap, $2-3, depending on where you're going, to ride the Metro Rail. And they've got machines, pretty easy. Buy a card, load your phone, however you want to do it. Cash with paper tickets. Then you have to go through a turnstile setup, several of them, 8, 10, depending on what direction you're going. A little sensors, you know the deal. You put it up there, like opening a key card for your hotel room. Open it up. Little gate swings open. The gates are a little plastic, quarter-inch thickness, swing open, sort of chest height, maybe belt height.
Just enough to stop an honest person.
Everyone we went to, the younger folks, they're just hopping over it. They can hoist themselves up on the machines, step over, and they're on the other side. So, at every one of those points where egress and ingress points, in the center is a booth. Somebody that works for the Metro Rail, that staffs it. I guess just to kind of coordinate, administer. I don't know what they do, but they're there. And she
likely used to sell tickets, but they no longer do that. So
that's a good point.
Union wouldn't let them cut that job, so they're just there.
So she came out at one of the stations. It had just happened on both sides. I saw 3 individuals, young folks, both sides, hopping it. And she opened the door to come out. She was going to lock it, go to the restroom. So I just asked her, I'm just going to find out what goes on here. I said, I'm sure you noticed that. What happens? She said, we're told to do nothing. Really? So these people are just riding for free. And again, it just occurred to me. That's stealing. It's not a lot of money.
Welcome to Democrat governance.
It's stealing. And I'm sure they feel entitled to it, right? And once again, it's a reflection of, unfortunately, moral decay in our society because the Democrats have told them, you just shouldn't have to pay. You're entitled to this. They just hop over it with impunity. And she just watches it. Oh, my gosh. We got to fix it, folks. We're stepping aside for Fox News and SuperTalk News and then Congressman Michael Guest.
Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher. And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Hump Day.
We're pleased to welcome now Congressman Michael Guest. He represents Mississippi's 3rd Congressional District. Congressman, good to see you again, sir.
Gerard, great to talk to you. Enjoyed getting to spend time with you this weekend and yesterday, and hope you had safe travels home last night.
Yes, sir, we did, and I just want to extend gratitude to you for taking the time to give us your personal guided tour of the beautiful, magnificent United States Capitol. I've been bragging about you, man, because I learned a lot of stuff I don't think the average American knows about. I shared a little bit of that yesterday, conducted an interview on the show, Dave Hughes filling in, and passed on some of the facts, some of the history of that wonderful building, and just feel privileged to accompany you on that great tour. Your knowledge of all that history and all those details, Congressman, was impressive, I got to tell you.
Well, look, it was an honor for me to get to take you and your wife and several others on the House floor yesterday. We got to go in the rotunda, stand there where President Trump was sworn in as the stage was still set up. And so special moment, special time, particularly right now in our country. There's a great deal of excitement as we kind of turn the chapter from what the last 4 years I believe has been one of the most inept, most destructive years, at least in recent American history, to a new chapter of hope led by common sense and conservative policies under Donald Trump. And so you were here. You got to experience the excitement as people came from across the country to celebrate with Donald Trump what we all know is going to be an amazing 4 years under his leadership.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt. He wasted no time in putting pen to paper on a number of actions, and we were just talking about it on the program earlier. A lot of this stuff, Congressman, is just common sense. For example, directing our military to focus on their core mission of deterring war and defeating our enemies should they attack and should they come after this country. That's just common sense that we're going to prioritize that over what he called radical political experiments and social justice training and so forth.
You're exactly right. I mean, whether those executive orders were doing away with DEI, which is something that was a long time coming, identifying the common sense approach. There are just two genders, male and female. His executive orders securing the border, doing away with the CB1 app, CBP1 app, which had been abused, reinstating Remain in Mexico, offering support for military to help with the processing of illegal aliens very quickly out of the country, to some of the energy policies that he put in place by executive order. Again, you're right. Those are common sense things. Those are supported by, I would say, 80 to 90% of all Americans. And it's something that we had to get a Republican conservative president in office to be able to accomplish. And so I'm excited about what Trump has done. It is now Congress's job to come in to support President Trump, carry out his agenda, and where possible to try to codify, put into law the things that President Trump has executed by executive order. Because for years, what we don't want is for President Trump's executive orders to be undone by his predecessor. And so if we as Republicans could put into law what President Trump has put in by executive order, it is much more likely to remain the law of the land for a substantial period of time.
It's one thing that occurred to me, Congressman, when I was taking in the speech there was, to some of this, it's kind of shameful that we even it's sad that our president has to stand before the nation and say, okay, starting today, we're putting America at the top of the pecking order with respect to our policy and our lawmaking and just our treatment of people. It's sad that we got to that point.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Under the Biden administration, we had an administration that seemed to put America last, that they weren't concerned about securing the border. They were willing to spend tens of billions of dollars transporting illegal aliens in care, housing, feeding, providing medical care, allowing illegal aliens to commit crimes against American citizens. They weakened our military by the woke policies that you are referring to. Now, they made the cost of energy more expensive by preventing drilling, by requiring people to rely more upon things such as solar and wind energy, which is far more expensive to produce. Yeah. And so you're exactly right. We have the progressive movement over the last 4 years did their best to destroy this country, but now with Republicans back in charge, with conservatives leading the government, you're going to see a fundamental change, and a change that I hope all Americans are excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that's just recently happened in the House there, went over to the Senate. Now it looks like President Trump will sign. That's the Lincoln-Riley Act. Tell the audience what that does.
The Lincoln-Riley Act was a bill that says that if illegal aliens are in the country and they commit a property offense, that those individuals must be held for custody once their sentence is completed, or they're not allowed to make bond, so that they can be quickly deported out of the country. That was named after Lincoln-Riley, a 22-year-old nursing student in Georgia, who was killed by an illegal immigrant, an illegal immigrant that was now in the country illegally, but while in the country had committed after a property offense, was then allowed to bond out, and then she was assaulted and murdered there in Georgia. And so that could have been prevented. It could have been prevented first by not allowing this individual in the country, and the second point that could have been prevented was once this individual violated our law, committed a crime, so they're already here illegally, then they violate the law a second time. There are jurisdictions that allow those individuals to go free. And so we put in place the Lincoln-Riley Act. That was the first passed piece of legislation in the House. It went to the Senate. It's been amended to the Senate. It will come back to the House later this week. The House will vote on the amended Senate version, and then we will send it to the President's desk. So the very first piece of legislation the President will have the ability to sign will be a bill that will make our community safer and continue with this tough immigration policy that the President is going to be moving forward with.
Again, just common sense, but you had colleagues there in the United States House of Representatives on the Democrat side of the aisle that voted against this legislation.
You know, you're exactly right. You know, we tried to pass this last Congress. We were actually able to get it out of the House. Chuck Schumer refused to bring it up for a vote in the Senate. The Democrats were unable to block it this Congress. they don't control the Senate. But there were more Democrats who voted against the legislation than voted in favor of it. And so you still have the large majority of the Democratic wing, particularly of the House, who are not concerned about securing the borders, are not concerned about the safety of American citizens. And many of those people, again, more than not did support it, were in opposition of the legislation. And so it seems mind-boggling that we have so many people in Washington, D.C. who are not concerned with putting Americans first.
Sounds to me like they're still committed to the America Last agenda that the former president discharged for 4 years.
Well, and you're right, and we saw that agenda was overwhelmingly rejected by the American public.
Yes.
For Donald Trump to have a mandate by winning all the states that he did, having such a majority of victory in the Electoral College, for the American people to allow the Republicans to maintain the House and also give us the United States Senate. I think a large part of that was the crisis on the southwest border and also the inflationary spending policies of the prior administration and the woke social programs that this previous administration had put in place. The American people are tired of it. You're right. They're tired of the American last policy. They want to put America first. Yeah.
I mean, the president indicated in his speech, we're going to forge ahead with a colorblind, merit-based society. What a novel idea. That's what got us to where we are, the greatest nation on the planet. The prior administration seemed to abandon that, and it put us in a more difficult situation to produce bad outcomes. We got a break right here. Congressman, if you can hang with us, I'd like to talk to you some more about the agenda going forward.
Sounds great. Thank you. I'm happy to hold through the break.
Sounds great. Congressman Michael Guest is our guest on Midday. Stay with us.
We've sent that rib van.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. We've got Congressman Michael Guest on the line, direct from Washington, D.C. So, Congressman, I also wanted to thank you publicly here for allowing Julie and I and our friends to hang out in your office after you graciously provided a tour to us. I know you had to tend to business. Your staff was fantastic. They were so gracious and so respectful, so nice. And, you know, I had to go meet with Senator Blackburn. I was invited to a meeting. That was yesterday afternoon. And one of your staffers was kind enough to escort me all the way over to the Dirksen building and then actually came to get me when the meeting was completed and escorted me back. Fantastic. You represent Mississippi well. But more importantly, your staff does, sir. And I know you're proud of that as well. We're grateful to them. I wanted to share with you, in meeting with Senator Blackburn, we got about 20 minutes with her and a couple of her staffers. You know, I impressed upon her, something I've talked to you about is we got to get these tax cuts extended, that we in the business world, until we have clarity on something like this, we don't know how it's going to affect our bottom line. We tend to freeze up and not make investments, not hire people, not expand, not announce plans. And we need to do that to get the economy really going at full steam because we got a new president and a new policy agenda in town. She agreed, but what she said, and then I'll be quiet and let you talk, she said, Gerard, I'm worried about the House because you got to have every vote the way the numbers work out right now.
You're exactly right. What we hope to do and what we will accomplish at some point this year is through the budget reconciliation process. So we're going to do a couple things. One, we're going to make sure that President Trump has the manpower, has the financial resources that he needs to secure the border. And then to make sure he has the money he needs then to begin the process of deporting back to their country of origin those people who have entered the country illegally, their asylum claims have been denied, and there are lawful orders of removal. And so that is to require additional federal resources to be able to do that. In the long run, I think we're going to see a benefit to the country because we will no longer be having to house and feed and educate and provide health care for people who have no legal status to remain in the country. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to put that in budget reconciliation. We are going to put the extension of the Trump tax cuts from his first term of office in that reconciliation process. There's also the potential there may be additional tax cuts that would be included. We know that the president on the campaign trail had talked about things such as no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. And so while I don't know exactly what tax policy will be in there, in addition to the extension, I think you're going to see some additional tax relief to the working American people. And the final thing I think the president really wants to make sure that he is doing is that he is plussing up military spending. When you do that through the regular appropriations process, because of the filibuster in the Senate, it generally requires bipartisanship. And every time that Republicans seek to raise defense spending, Democrats are going to seek to raise spending on social programs. And so by using the budget reconciliation process, we can break that tie of defense being linked to social programs. And so that's going to be the lift of Congress. You've heard talk before about whether we do a one-bill reconciliation process or a two-bill reconciliation process. That's going to be a call made by the president at this point. He seems to have settled on a single bill, which means we will have to put all of those policies in a single piece of legislation. And then on the House of Representatives, right now, we cannot lose a single vote. Our majority, which was a 4-vote majority, has shrunk even at this point with Matt Gaetz not being seated this Congress. We went from a 4 to a 3. Mike Waltz, who is from the state of Florida, resigned on Monday to be President Trump's national security advisor. And then Elise Stefanik will be resigning from the House once she is confirmed to be the ambassador to the UN. So it requires unanimous agreement within the Republican Party, assuming that we will get no Democrats, to be able to get legislation across the finish line. And so that's the challenge that leadership will have going into this Congress. But we all want to deliver for the American people. We all want to make sure that we're pushing forward with President Trump's agenda. And so he will be the coach calling the plays, and then the Republican Congress will be responsible for executing that. And so while that is a difficult process, it is something that we are all committed to and something that we're very optimistic that we will be able to deliver for the American people.
Yeah, and I think you're right. The way you described it is consistent with the senator's take on it as well. But let's talk objectively, I think, about how difficult this is. And what I mean by that is you can't lose a vote in the House to pass legislation, assuming all Republicans support a given measure and no Democrats do. And then you get to the Senate, and you got the challenge of passing legislation that meets the requirements in accordance with the Senate parliamentarian to pass on a simple majority through the reconciliation process. You're well aware you start inserting lots of budgetary provisions in the measure. and they get the calculator out, they may come back and say, no, that doesn't meet it. You got to come back with something different. I'm just nervous about that dragging on. And
you're
go ahead. Yeah.
Well, and you're exactly right. When you talk about the reconciliation process, there's a procedure in the Senate, which I know you know well, which is called the Byrd Rule, which basically means the parliamentarian, if there's an objection made, can look at what is trying to be passed through the reconciliation process and determine if it is more policy-based or if it is more budgetary-based, because budget reconciliation, again, is just supposed to be used for spending, revenues, tax increases, or in our cases, decreases in taxes, and trying to insert legislation that deals more with policy-related issues. In the Senate, the parliamentarian could rule and pull some of things out. And so you're right, when we're crafting this, we've got to craft it in a way in the House that we can get unanimous support, that we can meet the expectations of the American people, but also make sure that we can do it in a manner where once the legislation gets to the Senate, that the Senate parliamentarian is not pulling very important pieces of the bill, saying that it does not qualify under the Byrd Rule. And so that is going to be a difficult process, but I'm, again, confident that we're going to have the ability to get that done and to deliver. Okay.
Well, I like your optimism, and I shall remain thusly. But I think we have to be honest about the concerns. It's not an easy lift, and the Speaker has said as much.
Yeah, that's right. While we do have both houses of Congress and the White House, we have a very narrow majority. Again, we will have a one-seat majority once Elise Stefanik is appointed to be the ambassador to the United Nations. Now, we will backfill those seats at some point through special elections, but there may be any given day where if there are members who are absent for some reason, maybe they have funerals or sick relatives or weddings or something like that to attend, if there are 2 or 3 or, say, 4 Republican absences and no absences on the side of the Democrats, they would actually be able to control the floor of the House of Representatives on any given day.
That's true.
That is how narrow the majority is. And so we've got to do a good job through our whip operation, through Tom Emmer, making sure that we know what members are present, which members may have personal conflicts that would require them to be gone for a day or so, as we're trying to make sure that we have the votes to pass legislation out of the House. And you're right, it's not going to be an easy lift, but right now we are very dedicated and committed to doing that. And what makes it easier too, Gerard, is that, knowing that this is, we are executing on the agenda of Trump. And at this point, we have the Republican Party. We are excited about what he is wanting to accomplish, and we're not wanting to be an impediment to carry out the promises that he made to the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. I caught an interview last night with the Speaker and some of the various committee leaders as well, Jim Jordan, et cetera, and Comer. And they're resolute. There's no doubt about that. And they reiterated that point. This is what the American people voted for the president to get done, what they voted for him for. We're out of time, but we certainly do appreciate, as always, Congressman Michael Guest for joining us. You stay safe, my friend. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Gerard. I appreciate you.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. Thanks so much for being with us today. We appreciate it as always. So, man, oh man, just thinking about this legislative agenda, folks. If we don't get this Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, if we don't get that passed before the end of the year, to either extend and hopefully we get it permanent, your taxes are going up. I hope you heard me. Your taxes are going up. And I'm not talking about state taxes. That's nothing compared to federal taxes. It has some, of course, any dollar is financially significant. But the tax bite in your check, if you check out your check, is not the state tax burden, it's the federal. And my concern is that modifying the existing structure, the Trump Tax and the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the so-called Trump tax cuts, if we start inserting all sorts of new provisions, such as tips, overtime, Social Security, I would submit it's likely not to get passed. The deadline passes. I hope this doesn't happen. I'm just warning that when you start including all these new provisions, that's what sparks debate. And debate takes time. And as the clock's ticking, again, businesses, even individuals, are freezing and pausing decisions that are necessary to boost the economy because they don't know what their tax liability is going to be. And that's prudent on the part, certainly, of business decision makers. And we're talking about small and mid-sized businesses, the backbone of our country. And if they don't have clarity on what that looks like, their potential tax expense effective in less than a year, January 1, 2026, any sort of major investments they're considering, expansion, hiring, raises, all the above, they just say, man, until we know what our tax bill looks like, we better sit tight. I just don't get the feeling that that's widely understood and appreciated among our lawmakers. And I sure would like to see more focus and more discussion. There are two things that people are concerned about the most. I think it's just human nature and reality. First, your health, your safety, of course, paramount. Nothing else matters without that. Second's your money. I think the average person out there would agree. Yeah, that's important. And they would rank those 1 and 2 in terms of importance. But I don't get the feeling that the folks in Congress appreciate that to the level I would like to see them. Now, Senator Blackburn yesterday, Rhino, said she favors, and she's hearing a discussion in the Senate, her colleagues there, of taking up these new provisions in 26. Let's focus on getting extended or made permanent what is in place today. Do no harm sort of deal. And then let's work on these other matters in 26. And I think that is prudent on her part. I think that's wise. And I got the impression when she said something, she shared something to the effect that this is sort of being talked about. And, of course, when you got 153, of course, being Republicans, it's easier, I think, to get a sense of the attitude about. You don't have the diversity of positions because you don't have as many people. Just simple as that. You got 217 Republicans in the House versus 53 in the Senate. So it's a little easier to do kind of a straw poll and more conversations around the water cooler and in the Senate cafeteria there. I saw that. I was not able to enter, of course, but I could see it as I was being escorted through the halls there. It's pretty neat. Also got to see the House cloakroom. You've heard a lot about that. I don't know that I've ever seen a camera in the cloakroom. It's not exactly where you hang up your cloaks. It's kind of a little snack bar, little break room, if you will. But something that still exists in there, Rhino, that's really neat is big wood phone booths. Like, I think I counted 12, 6 on either side of a narrow corridor room, rectangular-shaped room, when that's the way you used to have to communicate. Now, of course, they still exist, and there still are phones, landline phones, with dial tone, and a little light outside each of them. You remember those days that says, yeah, somebody's using this when it's in use? And Congressman Guest shared, it makes sense. Yeah, nobody uses the landline phones, but they will go in there to have a private conversation because they're fairly soundproof when you close the doors. But I just thought it's kind of neat that all that's been preserved, and you can imagine in the pre-cell phone days what that was like, as they're all probably in line waiting to get to the next telephone, landline phone, to make calls. In the little snack bar there was a couple of attendants, and there were some pictures, by the way, of presidents who were recognizing some of the folks that worked in the little snack bar when they retired, and there were some great photos of the presidents with them, recognizing, commemorating them for their service there. That's pretty neat. There's a lot of history involved in that. That's the one place, by the way, in the Capitol they would not let us take our phones. We had to store our phones away, talking about in the House chamber itself. No photos. But Congressman Guest did a great job of sharing with us lots of history and lots of details. It's also much smaller than it appears when you're watching C-SPAN and so forth, usually from a higher vantage point. What's the gallery? It's not that big. It's kind of surprising. Certainly at the State of the Union, it just looks giant, but it's really not that big. And he pointed out the gallery, and the gallery looks way bigger with more seats. It's not that big, where typically folks sit, like usually the first lady or second husband, they're over here, and the dignitaries are here, and special guests. That's kind of neat, that all of that formality, just the way our nation conducts its business is it's awe-inspiring, and that's probably the greatest takeaway. The rotunda was really neat, of course, and I think I talked yesterday about the stained glass skylight, if you will, in the top of the rotunda. It's pretty cool. But this tax thing is we got tax debate going on here in the state. We got taxes at the federal level. It's all about taxes because it's just such a big part of all of our lives. I just did learn, I think we pointed this out a couple of weeks ago, Freedom Caucus member Representative Chip Roy of Texas. He's a regular on the media interviews. You see him a lot. He's a firebrand Freedom Caucus member. Good guy. Man, unfortunately, in a recent interview, he proposed increasing the corporate tax rate from 21 to 25%. He says it's necessary to get the rest of the Trump policy agenda through because it's going to cost a bunch of money. So he wants to raise the corporate tax rate. And his another individual who represents the great state of Oklahoma, Senator Mark Wayne Mullen, was informed of this, and he said, of course, Chip Roy's from Texas, nearby Texas. Mark Wayne Mullen said, absolutely not. And one of the two senators from Texas, Finance Committee member, who's involved a lot, and that's, by the way, I was meeting with Marsha Blackburn about taxes. That is because she is a member of the Finance Committee. John Cornyn said, absolutely not. We're in competition with other countries to attract capital. Countries like Ireland and others have reduced their corporate tax rate. They've benefited a great deal from that. We're not going to do it. So you guys will know it was Joel Anand and Natasha Srdoc I met with them. We've interviewed them many times on the program, had the chance to meet with them face-to-face, and shared conversation and coffee for about 3 hours on Sunday. They are the ones that coordinated the meeting with Senator Blackburn. They've done a lot of work with her. You know, Joel and Natasha are really heavily involved in policy with respect to Israel. They know a lot about that. And Senator Blackburn is a big proponent and fan of American-Israeli relationships. They asked her to chair this task force they want me to be on concerning tax policy, which is kind of exciting. That was the purpose of the meeting. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Get ready for...
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Back with you in the Element Well studio. Sam from Mount Herman says the congressman didn't answer your question on the business taxes. So let me be clear, Sam, that small businesses, most file as what are called, they're organized as what are called pass-through entities. And all that really means is that the net profit produced in the company, in the business, is passed through to the individual owners, and then they file their taxes as individuals. It's no different than you working for a company. You're a payroll employee, and you receive a W-2 at the end of the year, and that's what you use to fill in the income part of your tax return. So it's passed through, and then you're taxed as an individual, as opposed to a corporation that's organized as what's called a C Corp. They pay C Corp taxes. Presently, that's 21% of the net profit in accordance with the way IRS code says net profit is to be calculated. That's a little different than what generally accepted accounting principles dictate with respect to the calculation of net profit. I don't want to get too much into the weeds on that, but the bottom line is, I just want to be clear, it's not business taxes, it's individual taxes. That's what expires. It affects all individuals, regardless if you're an employee of a company or an owner of a company. But in both cases, you're filing as an individual unless you're a big C Corp type company. We have very few of those in Mississippi. Overwhelmingly, businesses that operate here are pass-through. So, yeah, that expires at the end of the year, and that's a concern. And again, that was because to pass the bill in 2017, it required including an expiration date on those provisions to fit within the budgetary constraints of the reconciliation process, allowing measures in the Senate to pass with a simple majority. And that's the scheme that's used. It's in accordance with the rules. Okay, we'll just put a sunset date on this so that when you do the calculations, does it go past that date, those provisions? Therefore, it would fit within and meet the requirements of reconciliation. I don't think the congressman is going to sort of play the hand there, because I think he, like the speaker and others, are trying to get a sense of where members stand. And I'll give you an example that's going to be a huge challenge, and just extending the current tax cuts. The current tax structure that determines what you're paying in federal taxes right now ends at the end of this year unless action's taken, and your taxes are going up. I can't emphasize that enough. But here's the problem. There was a provision in that 2017 Trump tax cuts measure that limits the deductibility of state and local taxes. You hear it talked about all the time, the so-called SALT tax, state and local taxes. It's $10,000. So there are Republicans in the House that represent districts in high tax states, New York, California, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut. There are a few others, but those are kind of the main ones. And they're in districts where their constituents want to either remove the SALT cap or at least raise it. Because as Rhino and I have talked about many times, if you look at the deadgum property and income taxes you pay in like New Jersey or Connecticut, heck, it's more than most of us pay for a mortgage here, the taxes on those properties. A lot of people, of course, in Mississippi, of course, we all complain about taxes. I do too. I want to pay as little as possible. But the truth is, when you get into a place like New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and you got a $300,000 house, you're paying $30,000 a year of property taxes. It's insane. So if you could only deduct $10,000, you don't get any benefit from that additional expense for federal tax purposes. Well, there are reps, Republicans, that want to either increase or end the SALT cap, which would benefit their constituents, make their taxes go down. And if they really push hard and stand hard on that, that is going to endanger the passage of just what we got now, extension of what we got now. Their fear, of course, is they're in districts that could go either way, Republican, Democrat, that if they don't champion such policies, because this is crazy. This is a tax provision that lowers taxes on often rich people that the Democrats favor, right? Because they want to get reelected. Because that's like a universal language, money. It's universal. So I'm just pointing out, we're going to have half a dozen or so Republican members of the House of Representatives that are going to push hard for that. And if we try to insert that in this legislation to extend the existing cuts or make them permanent, it's going to cause a problem for reconciliation purposes or just getting the thing out of the House to the Senate. That's a concern. We're stepping aside for a break. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We come back after Fox and SuperTalk News with Marie Sanderson. Stay with us.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. Haven't been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. It's hour 3 of Middays. That's the afternoon portion. We are live in the Element Wealth studio on this
Hump Day.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Marie Sanderson, former policy director, Republican Governors Association, and a GOP strategist. Marie, great to see you. How you doing today?
Great to see you as well. Well, I'm down here in cold Ocean Springs, but in navigating the snow, which you won't hear again for another 100 years, but otherwise I'm doing well.
Man, how about that? When you look at the temperature of the Mississippi Gulf Coast and compare that to Anchorage, Alaska, and it's colder. On the former, it's like, what's going on here? It's like in inverse. Man,
it's hilarious. I've never seen anything like it. The snow actually hits the Gulf of America, if you will.
There you go, the Gulf of America. So it's been an active couple of days after the swearing in of the 47th president, Donald Trump. A lot going on. And, you know, the first thing that struck me, Marie, and I'll ask you to respond on this, is he's more visible right off the bat. He is relating more to the media. I said earlier, I think he answered more questions yesterday than his predecessor did in his 4 years. So these are welcome sights. The American people need to see and hear from their president.
I agree. He is accessible. He is sharing with the American people his thoughts. He's candid. He signed a bunch of executive orders and did that in front of the American people. And some ways, depending on which network you were watching, you could hear his commentary on why he did it. And I think that's really refreshing after not having access to our president or vice president for the last 4 years.
It exposes it even more, does it not, Marie, when you see this instant contrast in such a short, compressed period of time? Like, where's Joe over the last the last 4 years, but I think even more pronounced over the last few months. He's just been kind of relegated to the back somewhat. And now we've got one that's just out there in front day and night.
That's true. The White House press corps, you can tell they're just appreciating this new access. The president made himself available via social media and outside influencers, podcasts during the campaign, and now traditional media is having to level up and increase their coverage of him. And to his credit, he's given them an opportunity to do that by making himself accessible. I think that's a direct contrast to what we've had the last 4 years.
Well, and the other thing from a media perspective, because of the accessibility, because of the engagement, the media can actually use his words, his sound bites, his statements, and their analysis, rather than guessing what the prior guy was doing.
There is no gray here. You know where President Trump stands. He's an excellent communicator, and he's doing it his way right now.
Yeah.
Certainly, he won't be able to offer the same access through the entire 4 years. He's going to have to get to work, and he'll have a press secretary that handles that moving forward. But even that person will be more accessible than what we've had in the past. I think this is fantastic for the American people to have direct line of sight into our president and what he's doing.
Marie, we've heard House and Senate leadership repeatedly communicate that their goal is to support the president's agenda. They get it, that he was elected to implement and execute that agenda. They've said that. But as a strategist, as one that understands better than most how the sausage is made, this is a bit of a difficult setup. I mean, yes, the Republicans have control, I guess you could call it that, of both chambers. This is not only a tough deal. I can't remember the last time we had a bigger margin in the Senate than we do the House.
It is very tight, and Speaker Johnson has to negotiate a bill that will get Republican support and in some cases Democrat support. It's very hard for people who practice partisan politics because it is a deal, and in many cases there has to be something in that legislation for all of these members of Congress to go home and say they voted for the bill for a certain reason. There's also really tough things. I heard you talking about tax reform earlier in the earlier segment. There's the debt ceiling. There is needed aid for California and other places in the country like North Carolina. And so you've got these must-pass bills and these other challenges that have to be analyzed and handled by this Congress with very small margins. Yeah,
it's really difficult as it is. And you know the Speaker, Representative Steve Scalise, they're all counting the votes right now. They got to be talking to their members about where they stand on this perhaps one big beautiful bill, as the president has called for. But you also know that the American people want to see prices come down. They want to see the border closed, and they want to see energy in the American energy industry unleashed to do its thing. And that requires policy changes. The president's somewhat limited. That's the way our system works with executive orders. He's done that. But he can do virtually nothing with respect to tax policy. And I just feel like that's the elephant in the room that I'd like to see get more traction and attention.
You're exactly right. The president, to his credit, and his team, Stephen Miller, who's his top policy aide, they did a lot via executive order, and they're not done. We're going to see more executive orders come out of this White House to get as much policy, promises made, promises kept done through the power of the president. But again, that has its limits. And you're exactly right. Tax reform and then spending, the way Congress spends money, it all has to be done by members of Congress. And these are going to be tough decisions ahead. I am heartened to see that the committees have been working. They've put out a number of memos, some which have been leaked on accident, with places where they will find savings because a lot of these spending programs, a lot of tax cuts also cost money, and they have to find a way to balance the budget. At least that's what our party hopes they'll do.
Yeah, and we've already learned that a lot of the spending is on programs that are technically expired on the books. I can't even understand how that happens exactly. You know, we'd never do that in business. You had a contract with a third party, and if the contract expired or terminated, you wouldn't keep paying them.
That's exactly right. And you know who else doesn't do that? States. And I know you spend a lot of time talking about Mississippi polity. Governors have to balance their budgets. They don't have the benefit of the federal government to keep borrowing.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've worked at the state and the federal level, and a lot of times, you know, we tell the federal government, the appropriators, the governors find a way to do this. You need to find a way to do this as well and balance our budget. It's
2 months away, Marie, and we got to go back to the drawing board to fund the government. 2 months. We're 2 months in a week. We're going to do this all over again.
Yeah, I mean, they have a lot of work to do. So in some ways, I'm glad the fanfare is over. Everybody had a nice time. I know they were freezing. I know you were there. But now it's really time to get to work.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think you're going to see a lot of activity come out of Congress. You're going to see the president get involved and lean in and try and push these members of Congress to do the right thing. And this president has a bully pulpit and a microphone bigger than anyone I've ever seen. So for those members that support him and take tough votes, he'll be there in their corner to support them in their reelect and beyond.
Marie, comment on this. The Democrats, where are they? They seem just floating in the ocean without any direction, without any guidance. What do they say? You're up the river without a paddle. It feels like that's where they are.
They're doing a lot of soul searching. That is for sure. Losing, we've talked on your show before, losing Hispanics, Latino voters, losing young adults, or rather that margin closing, I should say. It was really important for Republicans. The president has found a way to speak to the American people, the working people, and he has policies that they support. I think these woke policies, as we like to call them, DEI, some of these initiatives, the president has really hit a nerve with the American people, and Democrats are going to have to get back to basics. What is it that the American people want from them? They also are having infighting at the top. When you have infighting between the Bidens and the Pelosi and the Obamas, that's obviously not good for morale. That's been widely reported. And so I think you're going to see them do a lot of soul searching, but we can't take our foot off the gas here.
Yeah.
They will regroup. They always do. And we have to move forward quickly on what we want to accomplish before we lose some of our momentum.
Man, I hope so. And this is why I speak so strongly in favor of acting as quickly on this tax package, and getting that extended or made permanent would even be better, because we got to prove in the midterms, look, the policies work, look how great the economy is. I'm afraid if we wait, we're not going to get the full benefit of that. Marie, always good talking to you. Appreciate you joining us today. Thanks a lot. Marie Sanderson, GOP strategist. Thanks, Marie.
Thank you.
See you later. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Wanna play a game with me?
3.
Check it out. Let's do this.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's get on with it.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
So, President Trump just released the contents of the Oval Office letter the former President Biden left for the newly sworn-in president. This is a custom that's been around for a long time, right? They leave a personal letter in the Oval Office, the drawer of the main desk there. Real simple. Dear President Trump, as I take leave of this sacred office, I wish you and your family all the best in the next 4 years. The American people and people around the world look to this House for steadiness in the inevitable storms of history. And my prayer is that in the coming years, that's not really proper grammar, will be a time of prosperity, peace, and grace for our nation. May God bless you and guide you as he has blessed and guided our beloved country since our founding. I think that's appropriate remarks. No problem with that. Sam from Mount Herman. Gerard, here's a crazy idea. Why not leave it both ways? The states that have high property taxes, let them remove the incentive, and the rest of the states keep it. A couple of things there, Sam. First, the math doesn't work. Second, that's not legal. That is unconstitutional. Taxation in this country, Rhino, I can't remember the amendments or the law or the statutes, but I'm sure as I'll get on this, you can't have federal tax policy that is applied differently by state. Now, it may work out that way based on the way the math works, but the SALT cap doesn't say, this only applies in New York but not Mississippi, for example. That's not legal. That's not constitutional. So the problem with that idea, Sam, is that this only applies and makes a difference in the states where you pay lots of taxes. So if you kept it in place both ways, you're not doing anything. You're putting us where we are. Because the vast majority of the people in this country that live in states such as ours, which is a very low tax state from a state and local perspective, that doesn't really come into play, the cap. Now, there are people, of course, in our state where it does come into play. They pay more than $10,000 a year of state and local taxes. But in a state like New York or New Jersey or Connecticut, Illinois, California, where the taxes are exorbitant, state and local, it affects the vast majority of people. See, it's in reverse. Here, it's a fraction of the people this affects. In a state like New Jersey, it's virtually everybody because they have a high income tax rate, high property taxes, high sales taxes, all the above. So I'm just pointing out that I feel this is going to become contentious when the House seeks to pass some measure, whether it's one big beautiful bill or a separate reconciliation bill down the road. Don't know. Somebody asked, Jimbo said, please explain who I think they mean Senate. The Senate parliamentarian is. Yeah, this is just the individual that's responsible for enforcing the rules, if you will. And the reconciliation process, which is just a rule, a set of rules that allows legislation in the Senate to pass with a simple majority as opposed to the 60-vote supermajority, the so-called filibuster-proof majority. That scoring legislation and then reporting to Senate leadership on the eligibility for a measure to pass under reconciliation with a simple majority is the purview, the responsibility of the parliamentarian. The parliamentarian advises the Senate Majority Leader, actually, whoever is presiding at that time. If an issue comes up on the floor, whoever is presiding over the Senate is informed. It's usually the Senate Majority Leader, typically, presiding on the floor.
The parliamentarian is basically like if you had a football game without refs or umpires or lines judges or anybody, you just let the teams throw the flags, and then if there's a question about the flag, they go over to the sideline and ask the guy with the replay.
That's a good point. That's
what the parliamentarian does.
Yeah. So
they just sit back and wait for somebody to ask him a question about what's what and how's it supposed to work.
And with respect to passing legislation through reconciliation, that's probably one of the biggest responsibilities they have because we haven't had a filibuster-proof Senate where one party has 60 votes in a long time. Any legislation that passes either happens under reconciliation rules, the parliamentarian says, yep, that bill can pass with a simple majority, or it's bipartisan. That's the only way we get legislation, because we hadn't had a filibuster-proof majority from either party. On the ceasefire text line, President Trump said he would stop the federal income tax on overtime. Was this one of the executive orders he signed? So you may not like the answer, but I'm going to say thankfully no, and here's what I mean by that. I'm not thankful that we're not exempting overtime from taxes. I'm thankful that a president cannot make tax policy with an executive order. You can imagine what that'd look like. Our economy would have already crashed. We'd be all living under the sickle and hammer flag right now if Joe Biden had his way and could just sign executive orders to make tax policy. We don't want that. No, that's the responsibility of Congress. It is true that he promised that, exempting tips, exempting Social Security benefits, and also I think members of our military, firemen and police officers. I think that's who it was. Or was it teachers maybe? There was 3 groups that he said, your income, we want to make it totally tax exempt for income, federal income tax purposes. May have been teachers. Teachers, first responders perhaps, and members of the military. I know the armed forces was in there. So all of that would require legislation passed through the Congress, sent to his desk for signature. My gut feel is that what Senator Blackburn shared with me yesterday is what's going to happen, that will get pushed back. Now, there will be some members on both sides that will want to incorporate it. I'm just concerned that really does complicate this process and puts it at risk of getting passed by the end of the year to avoid reverting to the Obama-era tax structure. I think most people would say they remember when the Trump tax cuts took effect. Man, my check went up. I think it's the way most people look at it. Here's my check before, here's my check after. This one's higher. I make the same amount of money. Everything stayed the same, constant. Would you agree? I mean, that's what most people look at. That's fine. So just think about going back to the way it was before then. That's what we're facing if we don't get something done. My fear is we start complicating things, and this is always a risk on the campaign trail when all candidates at all levels talk about things they'd like to get done without really stopping to say, but you understand I'm not a dictator here. I'm just one part of the lawmaking process, even a president. Now, some of the things that a president does have authority to do under our laws, such as dissolving DEI departments, who, by the way, were established by the prior president. And this president's just reversing it. As an example, shutting down the border, as an example. Now, I will share with you that declaring the cartels as terrorist organizations, that's now receiving some legal challenges. There's some, according to our law, there's some criteria that has to be met for a group to be deemed such. I'm not saying it's a bad idea or that I disagree with it. I'm just pointing out the issues with the legal aspect of that. The offshore drilling as well, that Joe Biden just did it for spite. We all know that, to close down those waters. You can't drill there, knowing that 1953 law that we found that he relied on to issue those orders.
That's half of all actions taken by Democrat politicians are taken in spite.
No doubt. With really no rationale for, hey, if we do this, it would benefit the people. No, it was all spite. No doubt. All spite. But they'll tell you there's no such thing as Trump derangement syndrome. No, there is. Those actions were totally out of...
The idiots on The View are ate up with it.
Oh, big time. It's totally an act of petulance, honestly, and resentment and immaturity and thumbing your nose crap and just making things more difficult.
Liberalism is the ideology of the spoiled brat.
That's unfortunate but true, and that's where we stand. So I do think we'll see some action on tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits, but I think we're likely to see that next year after we get this measure through to extend the existing tax structure. I sure hope that's the case. We're coming right back with the remaining half hour of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio.
everybody ready?
I'm ready.
Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Ever since I was a young boy, I played the silver ball. From Soho down to Brighton, I must have played them all. But I ain't seen nothing like him in any amusement hall. That deaf, dumb, and blind kid sure plays a mean pinball.
So, of course, one of the things that President Trump ordered, get your butt back to the office and go to work.
And the gnashing of teeth has begun.
They're going to lose a lot of good people that can't go back.
Bye.
Yeah, exactly. I think
We got too
that's,
many people in the federal government as it is, and it's hard to fire them. So if you're going to quit voluntarily because you don't want to go back to the office, bye.
Part of the goal, of course, is to perhaps incite some attrition there.
Because if you were seriously a key cog in the machine,
yep,
you were probably already having to be in person to begin with.
Oh, there's no doubt. No, there's absolutely no doubt. So, of course, I said incite, and that usually refers to violence. I don't really mean that, but perhaps incentivize is a better term to use. We're incentivizing you to leave your employ here at the federal government by saying you got to go back to the office and get to work. So I think that makes sense. I think a lot of folks will. They'll be triggered. I'm not going back. It's just insane when you think about how many people that work for the federal government are working from home. We have these giant buildings that are empty, don't have people in them. What are we doing that for? You wouldn't operate a business that way, and it's once again.
And for every person that claims they perform 100% of their duties while working from home, there are about 900 million that don't do jack diddly squat. They just plug in a mouse wiggler and go do whatever.
That's true. That's absolutely true. So, someone on the C Spire text line says that Trump gave you guys the green weenie.
What the hell does that mean?
I don't even know what that means. I sure didn't see much of what looks like America at the inauguration.
Because you're racist.
Right. He put billionaires in front of his cabinet picks. That let 25 million peoples, who were important to him. I don't know what they're saying. Just passing on the thoughts from the other side.
Perpetually aggrieved and willfully ignorant.
So, in other words, people should be selected for various cabinet positions and other key roles in government based on how they look. That, which is, of course, totally counter to our viewpoints here, our positions here. The old idea of color blindness has kind of left the building. That's not good enough anymore.
Because wokeness is by definition segregationist.
Wow. I guess what strikes me about this is how many decades were we constantly browbeat about being colorblind? And now you say, okay, we get it. We don't care what their race is. We just want the best people. Oh, no, you're a racist. Oh, my gosh.
Because the Al Sharptons of the world couldn't make much money if everybody was colorblind.
It's been a pretty good gig for him, hasn't he? He and all the other hacks.
Race pimps.
They've made a living out of it, man. And stolen people's money is what they've done to produce zero value. So, man, I applaud the president for especially members of our armed forces. What do you want to bet we see the recruiting numbers and those enlisting start to rise? Because there's some inspiration and some good feeling, positive feeling about being a member of the United States military. It's viewed as a
Well, I mean, at the very least, they have a commander-in-chief whose elevator goes all the way up and isn't asleep by the time the sun goes down.
It wouldn't surprise me, however, if the numbers don't start to rise because of the way the military is being reformed with these executive orders and focused on their core mission, and it's that core mission, I think, that attracts a lot of folks to sign up and to enlist in the military. They don't want to sign up and go do privilege walks or have all this social experimentation and radical political theory nonsense foisted on them. They don't want that. Heck no. I don't think outerwear, Kristen Tupelo is talking about the members of the armed forces that I observed in line freezing. I don't think outerwear is prohibited. The outerwear at the Army-Navy game always looks fabulous. Yeah, so I guess I don't understand the policy, the protocol there. All I know is these poor folks that wear our nation's uniform are freezing. We all were, but especially them that didn't have anything else on.
I mean, if it's not issued and it's something you have to pick up on your own dime, then you would think you're likely going to spend your money on warm weather clothing that you could use in the field compared to warm weather clothing that you might get to use once in a blue moon.
Yeah. On the C Spire text line, unless I missed something, any event that is inside the building, they're not allowed to wear overcoats. If it's outside, then it's by the commander's orders. Well, I guess it would appear to me they could wear it while they're outside and remove it when they are inside. But I don't know. I don't want to speak for certainly the military's policies and rules around that. I just know they were freezing. And these were young people, of course. That's how cold it was. And they were trembling like the rest of us were.
The only reason I even mentioned the soldiers that guard the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is because during the pre-inauguration events where there was a wreath laying at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, some people were asking questions about the uniform of the head, I forget his title, but the soldier that was in charge of the event, because he had on formal dress uniform and had a big overcoat with gold buttons and all that, and it was an unusual look, especially considering you had all the others to compare it to with all the other heads of the military in D.C. getting their picture taken. And it was explained on social media that that's the uniform of those that guard the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. They have that overcoat with the gold buttons, and it's a part of their uniform.
Makes sense. Were the people on the C Spire text line in Washington, friendly like people here? Just curious. They were. I didn't see any issue there. They were very nice, very friendly, very interactive. Of course, like any big city, you see a lot of folks that you can tell don't speak English as their first language. And I don't know their status. I don't know if they're undocumented immigrants. And talking about
illegal aliens now.
Okay.
We don't have to play the word games anymore.
I got you. I'm for it. And in the numerous restaurants that we dined in, and of course the attendants at the hotels and shops and so forth, you encounter the Uber drivers. Is not surprised. I had one Uber driver that had a sign in the back door that was deaf, and had to communicate with him directly and sort of tap him on the shoulder. And it wasn't any big deal. He did fine. He did great. I think it's great that he's got gainful employment with that one physical defect. Oh, that's pretty cool. Let's see what else we got on the C Spire text line. Did you watch the Trumps at Church video? I saw a little bit of it. I sure did. I thought...
What, the browbeating bishop?
Oh, my gosh. That's just crazy. The
one that wants a show on MSNBC so bad she can taste it?
Seems like it.
She's already doing the round. She was on The View earlier, and she's been talking on CNN.
Man, oh, man. I thought Biden had signed some executive orders saying those people didn't have to come back to work in person. Yeah, it is complicated. It was a union negotiation. It wasn't an executive order. One of the unions, and there are numerous that employees of the federal government are affiliated with, they had negotiated some deal that allows them to stay home. This was like, you're right, back in December till 29. I don't know how Trump's executive order affects that. And that's again, that's just one group of the entire federal government, 2.8 million, I think is the latest number, workforce. That particular union's members was a small component of that. But no, there wasn't an executive order signed. And if he did, that could be reversed. But he didn't. It was a union. I know what you're talking about. I did a lot of different jobs in the military, says Mose, and worked with many civil service employees. I never saw a single job that it could have been done at home. Yeah, I think that's probably right. I pointed out perhaps the most egregious example, and that's the IRS. Well, their workforce. And this is before they've added the 80,000. I said that early on. They can't find 80,000 people, even though they got money for it. The workforce, I think, of the IRS presently sits at around 20,000. But what's just remarkable is that it's the Hoover building? No, that's the FBI. I can't remember the name of the IRS building, but it's empty. I've seen reporters like in the building with cameras saying there ain't nobody here. And I can tell you, when you get to work in these really, really complex tax cases, you can't do that at home by yourself. You need an army of people around you with all the various skill sets and expertise to interact with, to come to some conclusion. Coming right back with the final segment. Stay with us.
It's so awesome! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. I've been around for a long, long year. Stole many a man's.
On the ceasefire text line, my daughter has been in the Army National Guard since high school and attends Mississippi State. So why do you think we'll see an increase in military enlistments? And it's just a theory. It's just a hunch, I guess, if you will. But I can easily share with you what the premise of my view, my theory is that the military, I think, often attracted people that truly wanted to serve their country, wear their country's uniform, wanted discipline in their lives. And there are a lot of folks I know that maybe had some trouble in their upbringing, personally brought on, family dysfunctional situation, and they see an outlet as the military, and they like the order and the discipline and the skills they gain from that while serving their country. And there's something, I think, that's attractive to a lot of folks about just being part of such a powerful apparatus and around all the weaponry and all the assets and all the technology. I think there's a lot of excitement. Going away on a ship, for example, flying jets. I mean, all of those, I think, truly do stoke human emotion and pleasure to some extent.
My answer is a bit different.
Well, let me just say this. I think what happened is we separated from that. When we start, a couple of years ago, you and I did a contrast between the early 1980s ad, be all you can be in the Army, and how kind of exciting and inspiring and attractive that recruiting was, to all of a sudden we're doing these cartoon-style recruiting videos that are targeting transgender people.
That's the route I was going to go.
Okay.
You're much more likely to cast a net over a larger group of people if you're simply recruiting for the military instead of recruiting for the military from a group of people that have two moms.
And putting that out front as that's what you're focused on.
Because the number of people that have two moms versus the number of people that don't, it's pretty easy math to do. And if you're trying to pull from one pool or the other, which pool do you want to pull from? The small one, full of crazy people, or the bigger one?
Completely agree. So, yeah, I knew that's where you're going. I was getting there because I think you and I are aligned on that. But I remember vividly when we shared I think I found or you found the old 1980s. That was just a cool short commercial that I think folks thinking about a career in the military or serving for a while would say, yeah, that looks like fun. Remember they parachute out of the helicopters and they're sitting around after they've safely dropped to the ground and they're eating. They're sitting around like a fire or something, eating with their helmets off and so forth. And the enlisted man with I think it's a staff sergeant says, "Morning, staff sergeant," lifted his coffee cup or something. I mean, it just looks kind of cool. And you remember the Army's slogan or message, I should say, at the end of the video in the Army, we do more before 7 o'clock than most people do before they've gotten up or something to that effect. Well, that just looks kind of neat, separating you. But then we contrasted that with current day advertisement and promotion, recruiting style commercials. And it's all about what you were just saying. If you got two moms, the Army's the place for you. And I'm thinking people are saying, wait, I don't really fit that. And we cannot discount. You got the top brass that's up on Capitol Hill telling the world, the biggest problem we got in the U.S. military is white rage. Well, who the hell wants to be part of that? And then we've got all these reports that these kids are seeing, because everybody sees. If you're thinking about that, you're probably investigating, you're researching, you're paying attention. And when you see all these reports about privilege walks in the Air Force and and
leadership caring more about somebody's skin color or gender as to whether or not they get promoted over, passing basic standards.
Correct. Or also, that's a good point, lowering the standards for things like being a fighter pilot or serving in some other roles in the military. We got to lower the standards so the weaker people can pass them. Well, heck, there's no accomplishment if everybody can do it. People want to show that they can do things that others can't. That's just human nature's sense of accomplishment. I conquered, this big task. Remember something you and I talked about in the Air Force where they changed the seat configuration? I'm trying to think of it to accommodate, I want to say, female pilots or something to sort of offset or mitigate their lack of strength. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like
that and the pregnant flight suits.
That's what it was. Yes, that's what it was. I knew it had something to do with the pilot itself, the configuration. Yeah, we need flight suits to accommodate. I'm not really so sure you ought to be flying when you're pregnant upside down at 4 Gs.
To the point where you got to have a suit squeezing your blood back up to your brain? Probably not good for the baby.
I don't think so either. We're out of time today. Thanks so much for joining us. Great to be back with you tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless.
A SuperTalk Mississippi Media production.